Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 3 of this zero-cost webinar series, specifically on how to take care of your mental health as a professional wrestler. It's hosted by me, but mostly by my nonprofit, YouAreLoved. And in professional wrestling, my name is Jackson Stone, but my name is Aaron Mashvitz, and I own and operate that nonprofit called YouAreLoved. And this is part 3, again, in our zero cost webinar series. The first 2 webinars are available on YouTube, and part 1 was about depression. Part 2 was about anxiety, coping strategies, and crisis resources. And those 2 webinars were presented by Carl and Kyle, who work very closely with this project for creating mental health systems in professional wrestling. Carl and Kyle actually run our monthly support groups specifically for professional wrestlers, and this is another branch off those systems that we're trying to create. And we brought in a very special guest who's an expert in the area and also has the intersection of mental health and professional wrestling, which is beautiful, which is what we're trying to do. So a little background on Jordan Goodman, who is our presenter tonight. He's a certified life coach. He's also a licensed psychotherapist. He's a professional musician. But a little bit more importantly, he competed in the ring as a professional wrestler, as a teenager, and as a ring announcer, but then kind of transitioned out of that role into more brand management, brand expertise. So he worked for Ring of Honor in 2017, 2018, and I think 2019 was his last year there. But he's worked as a psychotherapist for nearly a decade. Is also a professional musician, like I think I said, and is integrating music, rhythm, wrestling, and mental health all in what he does in his coaching business and his life. I think it's very cool. I'm super glad that we got connected via the powers of social media. And I'm pumped for him tonight to give us some insight on mindfulness and meditation is what we will be going over. Kind of some general stuff about it and how it specifically relates to professional wrestling and how those 2 important things are to your mental health. So Jordan, thank you for being here. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackson, and or Aaron. It's great to be here. And I appreciate you inviting me to be here. A lovely introduction. Everything you said is true. Um, yeah, what a circuitous, odd life I've led over the past few decades. So yeah, I guess what brings me here more specifically are these topics of mindfulness and meditation, and uh, I love this stuff. I've been teaching these techniques and these philosophies and principles for a while now. I've been practicing them for much longer. I'm someone who has experienced a fair amount of anxiety throughout my life, especially the past month. I got COVID about a month ago, and I'm a lot better now, but I'm still having trouble breathing. So as you could imagine, especially in the weeks after getting sick, and like really having trouble breathing, I got really anxious. And I'm very grateful that throughout my life I have found the healing effects, the calming effects of a practice like a meditation, and have practiced those skills and have practiced things like diaphragmatic breathing or belly breathing for much of my life, because that is what I did much of the past month throughout the day to help not only strengthen my lungs, but to help calm my nervous system, to help calm my mind, to help calm my body and my emotions and racing thoughts that are catastrophizing like the worst possible scenarios when it's day 25 and you're still struggling from COVID. So you don't have to have COVID. I hope you don't have COVID to practice these techniques or to enjoy the benefits of a practice like meditation, or more simply, just a mindfulness practice of any sort. Whether you're a pro wrestler or a musician or a psychotherapist, or whatever you do. These are human skills, and they are things that human beings have been doing for millennia, for thousands of years throughout the world. And luckily, with each passing day, I have noticed that more and more people in our culture are becoming more curious and open-minded about mindfulness and meditation practices. So um, I'm happy to go wherever, Jack. You know what? I'm going to call you Aaron tonight, if you don't mind. I'm going to try that one out. I've called you Jackson all the other times. Um, I'm happy to kind of go where you'd like to go. I'm certainly interested in your own curiosity about this stuff. I'd prefer for this to feel conversational instead of me just lecturing those with us live in Zoom and whomever is watching or listening on YouTube in 2022 or 2032. And full permission to anyone else in Zoom to just chime in if you'd like. But Aaron, I'm curious. Is like, have you ever tried a meditation?
Um, yes. Um, I didn't start meditating or thinking about mindfulness until I had to,
Mm,
which is how I think a lot of people approach some of these mental health tools.
mm-hmm,
Like only in crisis mode can we then start to think about our mental health. And I've been an athlete, my whole life. And so having a mindfulness practice or being able to control my breath or my heart rate or how anxious or how much pressure I felt would have been highly beneficial. And then when I started professional wrestling, it would have been even more beneficial. But not until I got into a deep crisis did I start thinking about my mental health more seriously. And then these types of things, I began to implement deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness, journaling, thinking about being in the present moment, all of those kinds of factors. And so I would ask you, Jordan, if do you have a kind of a working definition for mindfulness, or how would you describe that to someone if they were to ask?
excellent. So perfect place to start. So when and again, you asked a handful of people, you might get some different responses, especially when people are asking the difference between like what is mindfulness and what is meditation. And there's a ton of overlap. The way that I would define any mindfulness practice. So, if we are doing anything to become more mindful, here's what I think most of us would generally agree upon. Um, it is our attempt to become more connected or more aware of the present moment. Okay, so, our minds are constantly going. And more often than not, it feels as if we're not in control of where we're placing our attention, right? So we might be thinking about something that happened 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago. We may be focused on something that is upcoming, like work the next day, or a concert that you just bought tickets to that is upcoming. So if we start to pay attention to what's going on within our own mental activity, oftentimes we find that our attention isn't necessarily focused on something that is happening in the present moment. So with a mindfulness practice, one key feature of it is that we're intentionally directing our attention or our focus to something happening in the present moment. Now, another key thing about a mindfulness practice is that whatever it may be that we're noticing or observing or witnessing in the present moment, it could be noticing a thought that's happening in our minds. It could be noticing that you're cold. It could be noticing that you hear a bird near you. Again, all those things would be happening in the present moment. So when we're noticing it, we don't want to judge it or we don't want to attach to it. And what I mean by that is we simply just want to notice it. We simply just want to observe the thing that we are observing. So if we become a bit more mindful about our own inner processes, we may notice that oftentimes our attention could be directed to, say, a thought. And maybe the thought is, hey, I just remembered that concert is tomorrow night. And we may judge that thought or become attached to that thought. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad, but if we keep following that, then we're not necessarily engaging in a mindfulness practice. So we could have that thought and then we could feel really happy about it. And then we could be inspired to call the friend that we're going with. And then we could be inspired to like look up when like doors are for the show, etc., etc. Now that's obviously a lovely, enjoyable example. Same is true for something that's a bit more emotionally charged in an uncomfortable way. So we may feel, let's say, like something in the pit of our stomach in the present moment. And that could trigger a thought of, oh no, what if I'm sick? And now we're thinking, what if I'm sick? And because we're thinking that, then maybe our heart starts racing more, etc., etc. We end up in whatever loop or whatever perhaps programming within us that these things typically play out. So uh, that's not what mindfulness is. A mindfulness practice is simply witnessing whatever is coming up within us in the present moment and doing our best to be curious, doing our best to be kind to ourselves, but ultimately doing our best to simply just witness or observe or notice that which is happening in the present moment. We're not attaching to anything. We're not judging anything that we're noticing. That's simply what a mindfulness practice is. It helps us anchor into the present moment. Um, and that can be really difficult. Oftentimes, when people are trying these things, they think that, oh, I'm not good at it because my mind keeps drifting somewhere else. Well, it's like, yeah, no shit, that happens to all of us. But this is part of being kind to ourselves, right? So the fact that we can notice our mind drifting somewhere else, if we can just simply notice that, then we're becoming more mindful of what's happening. All right. Now, the difference between mindfulness and meditation. So I believe meditation, by definition, is more of a specific practice. Okay. And usually, when we're meditating, oftentimes, we're constantly redirecting our attention, obviously in the present moment, but to something specific. So oftentimes, we call this an anchor, often in meditation. And in many meditations, the anchor becomes our breath. Why the breath? Well, the breath is something that all of us always have, and it's happening in the present moment. Also, the breath is a great anchor because, especially if we learn how to control the breath or slow down the breath, that actually sets off all kinds of biopsycho, physiological processes within us to help calm other things. So if we slow the breath, then oftentimes the thoughts are going to slow down. Heightened emotions might quiet a bit because when we have a slower, more steady breath rate, that sends signals throughout our body to let us know that we're safe, meaning that we don't need to go into a state of stress or fear in which we're trying to seek out, danger and protect ourselves and potentially, fight or flee or freeze or things like this. But when we slow the breath rate, that kicks in what we call, I guess in general terms, the relaxation response instead of the stress response. So meditation, it's more of a dedicated practice. And when often we notice our mind is drifting somewhere or our attention is drifting somewhere else, we simply notice that for what it is. We don't get upset at ourselves. We don't judge ourselves. We don't judge or criticize the thing that our mind directs toward. We just simply notice it for what it is, kind of like a cloud in the sky. And then like clouds in the sky pass on by, we allow wherever we're noticing, the thought, the feeling, the physical sensation, the noise, the distraction, we just simply notice it like a cloud in the sky, as it is, simply observe, let it pass on by, and simply redirect our attention back to the breath. I don't have a drum tonight, unfortunately. I'm on vacation right now in South Florida. But typically, when I lead meditations, I use a buffalo drum. Many people have found it to be helpful in a sense that it gives them something else happening in the present moment to focus on. So again, a meditation could be we're drumming, I'm talking or guiding, or just I'm drumming and we're just listening, and we notice, oh, I'm starting to think about that test I failed 10 years ago for some reason. It's still sticking with us. Okay, I noticed that. Now I'm going to gently redirect my attention back to the sound of the drum. I facilitated a guided meditation a week ago with one of my coaching clients. We were outside at a park by a dam. There was rushing water. It was very lovely. So I would constantly remind her to redirect her attention back to the sound of the rushing water, in addition to her breath. So again, often in meditation, it's more of a formal practice, and we are constantly redirecting our attention back to something specific happening in the present moment. Mindfulness is more of a catch-all term, and it could be applied to all kinds of things. Like if I'm eating, sometimes I'm trying to be more mindful of really asking myself, what does this taste like? What are the textures like, etc. If I'm writing or playing music or taking a bath, often I can be, try to bring more mindfulness to the present moment experience. But typically when we're talking about a meditation of sorts, it's more of like a dedicated, structured practice. So I know this is like heady shit, and Aaron, I realize that you have some experience with this, but I'm curious as I share this, like, does it make sense? Because this is stuff that I've been like talking about and learning about for, I don't know, 25 years, and it seems like every time I hear more or talk more or read more, it's almost as if the wisdom makes more sense, and I'm getting a better grasp of some of these concepts that often aren't necessarily meant to be fully grasped. So I'm curious, maybe, Aaron, if you could share just any of your, I don't know, perceptions of what I shared. I'm curious if what I shared just now, if anything was novel, compared to your previous understanding of these practices.
Before I answer your question, Danny, did you raise your hand? You have something that you like to ask?
I was clapping, but I
Oh.
do actually feel like that explained like mindfulness very well in the whole realm of trying to center back to the present moment. And centering back to the present moment is the whole goal of mindfulness. And no one really explains it that well. And Jordan, you just hit the nail on the head. And the meditation, and people get intimidated by meditation, including myself. And I do it every Thursday, where my rap group, my Wellness Recovery Action Plan rap group, does a certain meditation where we sit there for 5 minutes to start our group and sort of center and sort of get started. And I'm getting better at it, and it's sort of helping me center even at my job. So it makes sense.
Hell yeah. Thanks for sharing, dude. That group sounds amazing, by the way. And yes, I'm glad you're noticing you're getting better. Well, because it's a practice, right? So these things that we practice, we call it a practice because we're developing a skill. And you're right, there's a lot of people that try meditation for the first time or try meditation for the 100th time and often get frustrated. Or if it's something that I'm guiding where I'm with them, they'll say like, Jordan, I feel like I'm not good at it. Jordan, am I doing this wrong? Because I'm having thoughts the whole time. And again, that's kind of the point. Many people go into a meditation practice thinking the goal is to have no thought. Many people go into meditation thinking the goal is to sit like up straight with their legs crossed, that like some Buddha figure, just in complete zen and peacefulness, with no mental activity. That's not realistic, and those expectations also aren't kind to ourselves. To hold ourselves to that standard or that predetermined outcome, that's likely not going to happen. Again, it's noticing when our attention is going elsewhere. It's noticing when we're becoming judgmental or critical of something that we're noticing. That's the practice. It's noticing that we're there and we're not fully present on the object of our meditation, and it's being able to redirect our attention back to the anchor, whether it's back to the breath or back to the sound of the drum or the rushing water or whatever it may be. Every time we catch ourselves and we kindly and gently redirect our attention back to the present moment, that's what I consider like a rep. in the practice. Okay, so if you want a big ass bicep, Miss or Mr. or whoever pro wrestler, you do bicep curls typically, right? Well, if you want to develop the skill of mindfulness, well, this is what you do. You notice when your attention has drifted elsewhere, and you gently and kindly redirect your attention back to the present moment. That's one rep. That's one curl. And the more you do that, like anything else, especially with consistency, then the stronger that skill becomes. I'll share a quick story about how me developing this skill has been very helpful. So, if you're a pro wrestler, when you train, you learn certain moves. And obviously, the more you practice certain moves, the easier it gets and the less you have to think about it because muscle memory develops. No different than me teaching someone how to play drums, no different than me learning how to become more articulate, talking about these heady, thorny topics like meditation, right? The more we do something, ideally, the more muscle memory we develop, the easier and more natural it becomes, the less energy it takes for us to engage in these movements or exercises or practices. Okay, so I was 2 or 3 months ago. I was driving, very busy road, driving probably 45 miles per hour in my Jeep, and going through a green light. I see a car coming in the opposite direction with their turn signal on, wanting to turn through the intersection. It's a green light. Clearly, I have the right of way. So as I'm going toward this intersection, I realize this car is either not focused on me or just does not give a fuck about me and my car going 45 miles per hour, because it seems this car is fully committed to just turning through the intersection. So as I realize, like, this is about to be a full-on head-on collision, I honk the horn, I start to swerve a bit. Luckily, this person realizes what's going to happen. They swerve, and we avoid a potentially catastrophic collision. Now, in the moments after this, my body was on fire, meaning my heart is beating a million miles per hour, and I was expecting that because I just went through an incredibly stressful situation in which my sympathetic nervous system, or what we typically call the stress response in our body, it's going off because it's working properly, right? So my senses were detecting a very real and present danger, and so I knew that all these things were going to happen, and especially my heart rate really increasing, my breath rate increasing, more blood traveling to my fingers and feet in case I needed to, run or fight from this threat. This is what happens to all of us when the stress response is kicked into high gear. Now, because I knew that that was going to happen within my body, and also because I knew that the threat was actually gone, and I was no longer in danger, the danger that I was really in a few seconds before, I unconsciously started diaphragmatic breathing. So what is that? We call it belly breathing. Essentially, it's taking a deep breath, typically through our nose. And this is something, if you're not driving, that you're welcome to try with me. But it helps if we place our hands just on our bellies, over the belly button. And if we try to breathe through our nose, see if we can draw the breath all the way down to the point where our belly is starting to extend, and we can feel that with the hands. And then we can let it out either through the nose or through the mouth, slowly and gently. And as we do that, we can see if the belly draws back toward the spine. Okay, that's what we call belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. And when we breathe that way, it helps slow everything down. I'll just be very general about it. And again, I shared this earlier. When we breathe in that way, it starts to send signals to our mind, to our body, to our target organs, etc., emotional centers of our physiology, that we are safe and it's okay to self-regulate and return back to something closer to a homeostasis. All right? Now, I didn't intentionally do that. It's just that I've been practicing this shit for so long that it's my muscle memory now. I went through an incredibly stressful situation, and I now more automatically or unconsciously went right into belly breathing to calm myself down. And I'm really, really grateful for that. And here's why. If I didn't have that type of muscle memory, or if I didn't train my body and my mind for something like this, then maybe 10 minutes later, even though I will never see that person again, and even though I'm safe and I avoided the danger or the threat, 10 minutes later, I could still be in my car, like screaming, "That motherfucker, how could he do that? He almost killed me and himself. He almost wrecked my car." Like, I could have been like angry, like really angry. Or 10 minutes later, I could have been having a panic attack because like my body just went into high gear and I wasn't able to self-regulate. Or I could have been like really sad of like, oh my God, what if I got into a crash and then like I never got to see my family again and all these things, and now like I'm going down this rabbit hole of thought and emotion and physiology, where I'm feeling that. But no, I was able to recognize I was no longer in a real danger, and my body just immediately started self-regulating, and I maintain much more of a present moment focus. And again, that's the punchline of these topics tonight. Again, it's having more access intentionally or consciously with the present moment. So it's not getting pulled or attached, um, or becoming a victim to whatever programming or circuitry that has developed within us, over the course of our lives. Whatever naturally would happen. Some people, again, after the situation I went through, may have naturally gone toward anger, even a week later. They get lunch with someone. "Oh, how's your week been?" And the first thing that might come to mind is, "Oh, this asshole almost like wrecked my car." Right? Well, okay, that says something about that person and kind of where they're naturally attached toward, naturally directed toward, in their expression. So one person could have been led toward anger, one could have been led toward anxiety, one could have been led toward more sadness or fear or whatever it may be. If we know that objectively we are not in danger anymore, if we can lead ourselves towards something closer to gratitude, or something closer to self-regulation, um, then I would argue we will end up being healthier, happier, more productive human beings. And I think this approach, I would argue, is a lot more sustainable as well. I see Danny has his hand up again, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, my friend.
This reminds me actually of DBT, a lot of dialectical behavioral therapy, which I did take 6 months of. And every time we would go through a module, we would go back to mindfulness, all the mindfulness skills, and try and like relate everything back to mindfulness. Because if you don't have the mindfulness skills down, you're not going to have distress tolerance down. You're not going to have the whole validation down. You're not going to have relationship down. So for the moment, it really relates back down to mindfulness and how in the moment you are going to react in a certain situation. And I haven't reacted to situations the best. Sometimes I scream like a banshee, and I did it the other day. I screamed like a banshee because I didn't take my medicine and I was feeling unregulated. And sometimes you have to take the lumps with the lumps, and sometimes you have to take the ups with the downs. But that's why those skills are there.
Totally. And again, perfection isn't the goal. If we keep in mind, or we cling to this idea that perfection of some kind is the goal, then oftentimes we're just going to let ourselves down or become more frustrated. Again, it's a practice. It's something that we develop over time, and it's not a straight or linear path toward improvement. So yeah, of course, some things may happen. There may be some life circumstances that happen We all have our own unique triggers. Sometimes we're not as, let's say, resilient because maybe we're sick or maybe something happened in our life that's causing some distress. So yeah, we can't always expect perfection with this stuff, but knowing that we are practicing these things, we can pretty reliably trust that over time, these skills that we're committing to developing, we're doing just that. They're getting stronger. I see Carl's hand is up as well. Come on in. Dr. Carl, I believe. World famous Dr. Carl.
Thanks so much. I really like the analogy that you used earlier of doing and getting reps in emotionally. And it reminds me of a lot of when I think of mindfulness or meditation, I'm thinking of forgiveness. When your mind starts to wander, it's a great practice of forgiving yourself. Our life is going to be wrought with times where we're going to feel like we really screwed up, and we're already backlogged with all the times we didn't know how to handle it. So practicing that in meditation and mindfulness of it's okay. It's all right that this happened. It's okay that you feel this way and that you have this emotion right now. And then you can go to a triage with it a little bit. Is it worth feeling right now, or is my energy better spent being mindful and using meditation to help me work towards those future goals? So I really liked how you framed it, in the athlete style. It's good stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, know your audience, I suppose. Thank you, Carl. Yeah, look, what Carl's talking about is what we call the self-talk, right? So whether we realize it or not, again, it depends on how mindful we are. Whether we like it or not, we're always having this inner conversation with ourselves, right? And sometimes you could ask, like, well, like, who the fuck is the one talking, and who's talking to who, and it's all me, but like, what's going on here? Well, this is always happening within us, again, whether we realize it or not, or whether we like it or not. But if we can become mindful of the fact that it's happening, if we can become mindful of anything that's objectively happening, then we have more of an ability to do something about what we're becoming more aware of, right? We can take the responsibility to ask ourselves, is this helpful or not? And if it's not, would we like to do something about that, right? So what Carl is suggesting is that when we're having some sort of experience, talking to ourselves about it in a kinder way, with more patience, with more curiosity perhaps, with more grace, like that's a more sustainable way forward, right? So, and again, that can be a mindfulness practice in and of itself. Just noticing the mental chatter that's going on in our heads. Again, we don't want to judge it. We don't want to get trapped in the narrative. We don't want to go down the rabbit hole. It's like, you get on YouTube to watch one video, and then 45 minutes later, you're like, I don't know, watching like the history of TCBY, yogurt, right? Maybe that's just me. But like this shit happens sometimes, and we're not being as intentional about where we're directing our attention or how we're spending our time when things like that happen. Especially when we're talking about things, YouTube or social media, where there's algorithms involved that are expertly designed to capture as much of our time and attention as possible for the purpose of profit, or collecting more of our information, right? Like these are skills more than ever where it would behoove us to develop, these types of skills, because now we are combating very powerful algorithms that, again, are designed to make us less mindful, okay? Preying upon our own interests and preferences. So, again, what Carl's talking about is this idea of a more positive self-talk, okay? Like if many of us, if we're honest, myself included, like we would never talk to like a spouse or a parent the ways in which we often unconsciously talk to ourselves. We may like mess up something, and then automatically, if you pay attention, you may notice you're calling yourself a piece of shit, right? Or like, why didn't I get that right? Or why wasn't I more prepared? And like, I always like fuck up or whatever. Again, that's not that kind to ourselves. But here's a key thing. If we start to notice how unkind we can be to ourselves, we don't then want to get more angry or more upset at the fact that for whatever reason we're doing this to ourselves. Again, the more negativity, the more judgment and criticism that we offer ourselves, we're just creating more shit to contend with in the first place. And like, let me tell you, I don't know, I've been a human for like 36 years. Like, it's often hard being a human. And I've had a pretty great life. I'm very privileged and very pleased. But it's hard being human. So why are we going to put more stress and more judgment and more pressure and more criticism upon ourselves? The greatest relationship we'll ever have, the most primary and key relationship we will ever have, is the one we have with ourselves. Inside game first. You know, in my psychotherapy, in my career and business coaching, in my empowerment work, in the groups that I lead at conferences and at universities and with kids and so on, I say this all the time. Inside game first. Okay? Whatever is going on within us, in our heart, in our minds, in our body, that's going to be reflected in everything we do, in every relationship we have, whether it's business or romantic or social or otherwise. Okay? Again, one of the key reasons why some sort of mindfulness practice is so key, because it helps us form a more open, kind, flexible, curious posture in which we can relate to something. And if we can, relate to ourselves and our own inner experience from that posture, well, then we're setting ourselves up for more success, and we're also setting ourselves up for more honesty, right? Because we're going to start noticing things we don't like about ourselves. We may start noticing, oh, there's that pain in my neck again, literal pain in my neck again, right? Or, oh, I'm noticing that I'm watching that person across the street and I'm like criticizing their physical appearance in a negative way. Ooh, I don't like that about myself, right? But again, we want to just be open to whatever we may notice so we can have a more honest, objective, reality-based assessment of whatever it is that we're noticing, especially within us. And if we can have access to that, then again, with that awareness, there's more potential to change the things that are not working for us, or we could change the things that we don't like. So with that, I'm curious where you want to go, Aaron. I'm certainly happy to guide us through, maybe like a 5 to 10 minute meditation, just to get a sense of what that practice could be like.
Yes.
And also I think it might be helpful to maybe just have a conversation specifically for pro wrestlers or people within pro wrestling about ways in which they can relate to this stuff and apply
Yes.
these things. I think
Yeah,
that would be
that's
helpful too.
I think that's where I was going to go. I wanted to circle back to that initial question you had for me because I think it fits well right here now, where I can relate it to the things that I've learned over the past 4 years, kind of studying this stuff and being a wrestler and an athlete and now running this nonprofit. Your definition of mindfulness basically matched the working definition that I have, which was basically a particular way of focusing on the present moment without judgment.
Yep.
That was my working definition. You said it all in more elaborate way. And then I view meditation as the kind of reps that no one sees, so that when we get into real life and we have maybe one bad thought or we think negatively, we aren't secreting a bunch of those thoughts because we've done the inside work, like you said, of meditation, and we've noticed our thoughts, we breathe, we used our breath, all of those things. So when we get into real life and a conversation before a professional wrestling match, we're starting to kind of secrete these thoughts, and we can say, okay, take a step back. I practice my mindfulness. I've now become aware. What's the next step? And Carl and you mentioned self-talk, which is a huge thing I talk about in relationship to athletes. And so if you want to talk about confidence, Confidence is very important as a professional wrestler because you're going out in front of people and you're presenting yourself in a very vulnerable way. And it takes a lot of courage and confidence to do anything inside a professional wrestling ring, whether it be a ref, ring announcer, wrestler, all of it. It's very hard. And so confidence is key. And to build real sustainable confidence, it only comes from one place, and it comes from how you talk to yourself. Most people believe that confidence comes from your previous successes. So that in part is slightly true because you build credible self-talk from your previous successes because you've earned the right to say that to yourself. But if you only build your confidence on previous successes, what if you have a bad match the night before and now you're wrestling on Saturday? Your confidence is going to be a little shaky. If you have a good match, the next night you're probably going to be a little confident. But we don't want shaky confidence. We want that bulletproof, anti-fragile confidence. And so the way you have that no matter what is you first, like Jordan's talking about, building this mindfulness practice, because awareness is that first step to changing anything. And then you can start to build that positive, credible, uplifting self-talk, regardless of the situation and regardless of how you did the night before or what you might be feeling in the moment, because you're starting to do those reps and sets on your confidence. And I think that's important in relationship to the self-talk, the mindfulness, the meditation, and all of those things kind of wrapped in one. If you're speaking about your body language, your focus, and your self-talk, which kind of all relate to confidence as well. I teach my athletes to do this when they're kind of feeling a little bit pressure in the moment, or they're losing lack of focus, or they're feeling too tense in their muscles. I like to call it flip the switch. And I think this little practice can lead us right into a guided meditation from Jordan. So basically, flip the switch is something you can do anytime, all day, as many times as you need. It's 3 steps. The first step would be get into your superhero pose. So you're just getting big body language, chest up, shoulders back, head up. You're embodying your favorite superhero, right? So you can feel powerful and grounded in the present moment with who you are. And then you do the breath that Jordan talked about, right? One big deep breath in through your nose, out from your belly, out from your mouth. And then you say something kind to yourself. And as you're saying something kind to yourself, you smile. And that's it. That's the 3 steps. Flip the switch. It takes about 10 seconds, maybe less, depending how long your breath is. But that's a practice you can do all the time to do it in the moment, to try and get back in the moment of being more mindful of your life, how you're talking to yourself, the way you're showing up, all of those things. And so I just wanted to add that as a nugget of information. But Jordan, yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Love it, dude. Thank you for sharing all that. Interesting too, just to kind of hear someone else's perspective, especially someone who's like guiding, other athletes. I think that's really cool. Again, if you work or even are just a fan of pro wrestling, I mean, you're very aware. This is, it's a performance where the success really depends on the relationship and more so the response from an audience, right? So it's not like a different type of sporting event where if you get the most points, then you win, right? Or if you get it in the net or in the hole, like then you did a good job. With professional wrestling, we're telling stories. It's emotional connection with an audience. And the thing with audiences, and I know this intimately as a performing musician, but especially as someone who has facilitated drum circle programming for over a decade now, in which I'm giving percussive instruments to quote unquote non-musicians, many who have never played music, especially improvised music with a group of people. Like, I don't know who's going to show up and how they're going to show up. And if you're a pro wrestler, maybe you have some educated guesses of like, okay, this storyline is working. We got some heat going into the match, and we know this crowd is typically like a hot crowd. But again, we don't know for sure who's going to be in that room and how they're going to respond. And that's why it's so key that we develop skills that help us become more connected, more observant to the present moment. And that's why it helps to develop skills in which we allow ourselves to be more open-minded and flexible, right? And obviously, the more experience you have, even the more talent you have as a professional wrestler, you're able to adjust on the fly dependent on how the crowd is or is not reacting to you. Obviously we don't want to lose control and let the crowd dictate necessarily what's going to happen. But again, it's a relationship, and we want to like create, this dance in which we can help influence or tilt the crowd toward the direction that we want, to help us most successfully tell the story that's been designed that we think is going to have, the maximum effect and ultimately make us the most money, right? So if we can develop skills to be more perceptive, to be more present, moment focused, to be more aware in the present moment, what's happening in the room right now? How is the crowd responding, etc., right? These are mindfulness skills. When we, again, I also know what it's like to perform a new song for the first time, or a song that like I'm under rehearsed to play. Just like I know what it's like when I was 14 years old and having my first professional wrestling match in front of like my family and 50 other people. Like I was in my fucking head the whole time, right? I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this move, and then I'm gonna do this move, and then as a heel, I'm gonna taunt the crowd, and then I'm gonna do this move, and that's gonna get to this like pivotal point in the narrative of the match. Just like if it's a newer song I'm performing, I'm thinking, okay, I'm in the verse now. How long does this last? And then, what's the fill that transitions to the pre-chorus? And then what's the groove of it? Is there more energy in the pre-chorus? Again, the more I'm stuck in my head, the less present I'm going to be to the thing that's at hand. The less present I'm going to be at, is the song connecting with the crowd right now? And if not, what can I do from behind the drum kit? Maybe it's make more eye contact with people. Maybe it's more showmanship in the performance, right? Maybe it's I can't hear the bass in my wedge monitor, and I need to communicate to the sound person like, hey, can you turn up the bass, right? It's like I can't be mindful to many things at once. We can only really pay attention to one thing at one time. So the more that I'm in my head about what the next move is or what the next part of the song is, the less present I'm going to be to what's actually happening in the room and what my job is. My job, whether it's you're a professional wrestler or a musician or a public speaker, like your job is to connect with an audience and to create change of some kind. And if we're stuck in our head about what the next sentence is going to be or what the next spot is going to be, then we're going to not be as effective in creating that emotional connection with an audience and ultimately creating the change in the audience that we're desiring that's going to make them angry or happy or joyous, etc., to make them feel like they got their money's worth and to inspire them or motivate them to pay their money to see you the next time. Again, why it's so important to develop these skills of mindfulness. So with that said, I'd be happy to lead us in a meditation. Typically, I use a buffalo drum that I've used for a long time, and 1,000+ guided meditations. I am on vacation right now in South Florida. Thus, I don't have it, and that's okay. And perhaps in the show description, Aaron could link to a 10-minute guided meditation using my buffalo drum that I offered on the Wellness Policy, a pro wrestling mental health podcast that I do each month with my good Canadian friend Wei Ting.
It's an amazing show. Amazing
Thank you.
show.
If you're watching this, check out Jackson Stone's episode on the Wellness Policy.
Yeah.
A wonderful
Jordan,
time we had. Yeah, please.
I have one last question that I think would be important before we wrap up with the guided meditation. Mm-hmm. Say a professional wrestler is 10, 15, 5 minutes out before their match. And they're feeling like it's a big match, feeling slightly anxious. They're not locked into the present moment. Any suggestions as to what they can do in that small time frame to get them in sync with their opponent, in sync with their mind, their brain, their body, outside of the flip the switch that I mentioned, but something that you would recommend?
Absolutely. Great question. Look, to practice mindfulness, it doesn't need to be this formal practice where we're planning for 30 minutes to do something. And again, we don't need to be like positioned in like a certain posture. We don't need to have like the right incense and the right like lighting and music and all that shit. Like here's a great thing I often share. Um, every time you open a door, and again, how often do we open a door throughout a day? Well, if you think about it, like a lot. You know, we wake up and then like we may open the bedroom door, and then we may open the bathroom door, and then we may open the shower door. When we leave the house, we open the front door, and then we open the car door. So anytime you're opening a door, maybe see if you can make this a practice of one mindful breath every time we open a door, right? So, okay, opening the door, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And that's a way where we can start to develop muscle memory, or ways to remember this practice, right? So, okay, now we're a few minutes out from a big match. We might be feeling like the pre-match nerves, the jitter, the adrenaline, perhaps the insecurities that we may hold, hoping that the crowd responds to us, hoping that the match goes over with the crowd, hoping the match goes over with the promoter so we get another shot with this company again, etc. Who knows where our heads may be and where our bodies may be. But again, if we have, if we're developing this practice of opening a door, we take a breath. That can help anchor us into the present moment. So what I would perhaps suggest, if 5 minutes out from a match, you're feeling overwhelmed. Again, like stress is good. Like that kind of what we call like adrenaline rushing through our body. That can be a good thing depending on two things: how we interpret the experience of stress and how we use that experience of stress, right? So there's this term we call eustress, EU stress, eustress. That's what we call quote unquote good stress. Okay, so if I'm about to go perform on stage, or when I was with Ring of Honor and we're about to go live on pay-per-view, I'm feeling that eustress because things are happening in my body to let me know, yo, Jordan, something important is about to happen. Please pay attention, right? But physiologically, we experience that in a similar or the same way as unpleasant, stressful experiences. Like, I don't know, you're about to take a test that you feel underprepared for instance, right? So even if we're about to go out and perform as a pro wrestler, and we start to feel that stress or anxiety again, it's how are we interpreting it? Oh, I'm noticing my heart is beating. I'm noticing that I like just took a piss, but I got to pee again like 30 seconds later, right? These are things that happen when like our body is under stress. And instead of worrying about that or thinking that something's wrong or freaking out about it, again, what's the self-talk? So often for me, I may say to myself, something very meaningful or important or high stakes is about to happen. This is a normal response. Okay? So it's how we're relating to our own thoughts or physical sensations. Okay? So there's more productive ways and less productive ways to do that. And then once we're kind of talking to ourselves or experiencing ourselves from a more helpful posture, from a more productive tone in our self-talk, then again, it's whatever practice can help ground you. I think ground or grounding is a great helpful descriptive term to use, because again, when we're like freaking out and our thoughts are going like a million miles per hour and we're feeling like the energy is about to burst out of our body, we can feel flighty and we can like feel like we're not in control. But what can help ground us, right? So it could be something as simple as taking 1 or 5 of these mindful breaths to help ground us. Often I think it helps, again, to connect with as much of our body as possible. So often I'll rub my hands together, or I might stomp my feet, or I might clap my hands, because it's a really tactile, physical way to bring my attention to the present moment in my body, instead of getting lost in like this swirl of thoughts that we can't see. And it makes it harder to get a grasp on things that we can't see, of course. But again, if you can feel like the physicality, or if you can see the physicality of our bodies, that can help ground us. Again, if you're religious, maybe it's like some sort of prayer that you say to help ground you. If you are into music, maybe it's a particular song that you may feel, oh yeah, when I listen to that song, I get in the zone. Well, what do we mean by in the zone? Well, oftentimes when we say we're in the zone, we're more focused, we're more grounded. We feel like we're more in control. So if we're really listening to the music, especially with earbuds, if we're really physically feeling the music and it feels grounding to us and it feels like we're getting like more control over our present moment experience, like do that. And I think maybe the punchline is there's endless things that we can do. There's endless types of ways to practice mindfulness. Experiment. You're a pro wrestler, which means that you're an artist, you're a creative, right? So like try shit out. Like taste things. Some things taste great, some things taste like shit. But the more we taste new and different things, then the more refined our taste becomes. We start understanding this works for me, this doesn't work for me. Okay, this works for me. Again, how mindful are we of what works for us or what tastes good or doesn't? And how honest can we be about that? Again, that's why the more we like, in any direction we go, we're always going to find our way back to mindfulness, because the more awareness that we can create, the more access we have to the present moment, then the more truthful we can be and the more accurate we can be in how we perceive ourselves in the world. So an incredibly long-winded way to answer your question, Aaron. But again, what I would say to sum up, it's checking our perception or maybe our posture or the ways in which we're relating to ourselves in the present moment. Realizing, okay, I'm hyped right now. I feel a bit scattered. I feel a bit nervous. Like just noticing that and being real with ourselves and like having this inner conversation or experience within ourselves of like, okay, I'm going to check in with myself right now. Noticing where we are, and then over time, trying out different ways to help us become more grounded in ourselves, in our mind, in our body, whatever that may be. And the great thing is that we can do this with other people. So, you know, I worked many shows with Ring of Honor, and I saw how different performers prepared and went through the reps of a match. Sometimes I would see the wrestlers and the referee like all together. Sometimes, you know, they have their handshake, they have their huddle. Bands I've been in where it's the most fun, we like have chants, just like a sport team may, to get more in sync with each other. And when we have practices like this, especially with pro wrestlers, especially with pro wrestlers, where we're literally putting our health and our lives into the hands of another human being, if we can develop some sort of practice in which we can ground together and create more trust amongst one another and create like some sort of bond and get on the same wavelength and like ride the same vibe or whatever terminology you want to use, like do that behind the curtain so then you can go out and make money doing it in front of the curtain. So that's what I'd say. Wondering if you have any thing to add to that, Aaron, and if not, I'd be happy to guide us through a pretty brief meditation.
No, that was beautiful. Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, because we're about at an hour, so yeah, let's wrap up with a beautiful little short teaser meditation, as to then go check out more of Jordan's meditation and his coaching on his website, which will also be in the YouTube notes. Does anyone else have any final questions, or should we get into the meditation?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Danny,
my pleasure, dude.
Thank you. You were a brilliant part of this hour. Brilliant part of this hour.
I see Neil's hand is up. Neil, it's 3 a.m. over in Northern Ireland. Come on into the room.
It is, and that's why I have my camera off. You don't want to see what's in front of it at the moment.
Oh, I've never wanted to see, Neil.
Just a quick question on the analogy about reps, and you build muscle in the gym by doing reps. You build your mental resilience and all of these things through regular mindful practices and meditation. And I just wanted to sort of chip in to say, I used to build meditation into my morning routine pre-pandemic when I was going to an office in the morning. So it was very much part of the morning schedule, get out of bed, brush the teeth, have a shower, and then try to set aside 10 to 15 minutes for that. And since working from home became a much bigger thing, it's drifted a little. And I have found that just as when you don't go to the gym, you lose muscle mass, I am probably losing a little bit of the benefits from meditation. So to you, Jordan, and when working with clients and so on, what do you feel is a minimum, perhaps, number of times you should meditate, and maybe for how long? So just those little practical points.
Thank you, Neil. Ring rust, right? You don't do something, like you get some ring rust, and then once you get back into the thing, it's kind of like learning to ride a bike again. It might take a bit more effort. It may not feel as natural, but it doesn't typically take that long to get back to where you were, because this muscle memory, obviously dependent on like how long you had been doing the thing, etc. Look, to answer your question as honest as I can, I would suggest, as far as like frequency and duration, I'm more interested in someone just doing the fucking thing. So if it's once a week for 1 minute, but that's actually doable, and that's something that someone can actually follow through with, great. Because what's the point in me saying 10 minutes a day if the person's not going to do it? And again, it's just a matter of like how honest we can be with ourselves. And look, if someone's really struggling with like starting or maintaining a practice, well, then I might be more interested in having a conversation about, well, where's the resistance and what might be an emotional motivation to get it right, or to further commit to it. But again, that's why I like this thing with the door. Open a door, take a breath. Right? Or it could be anything, that you might be doing. So, okay, you have your routine. If you know that you're going to brush your teeth twice a day, and if you're like me and have one of those electric toothbrushes where it has a 2-minute timer, so I know I'm going to do it for 2 minutes, and then when I'm done, like it's going to stop, and then I'm done. I don't have to think about it. It's easy, and that's why I do it. So, okay, maybe when you brush your teeth, for those 2 minutes, you're going to become more mindful, right? You're going to focus on like what the bristles feel like on your teeth and your gums, and what the toothpaste tastes like, and like what the water is like, or oh fuck, I should have used more water because it's like kind of like janky and dry and like whatever. Like again, we're not judging it, we're just becoming more aware. That's what I would say. Again, I'd be more concerned with like what's realistic, what someone's going to follow through with. I will also say that there are endless free ways to get really quality guided meditations, if that's what works for you, similar to what I'm about to lead us through. Again, the past month, I'm doing this like sometimes hours a day because I'm feeling so sick from COVID, and I'm trying to self-regulate and calm my body and put it into a state where it can actually heal itself the way our bodies are designed to do. And so I'd go on YouTube or like Spotify or whatever. There's endless free meditations. And again, it depends like what you're looking for. So sometimes I would search 10-minute guided meditation for anxiety, or 30-minute guided meditation for sleep. So again, I use a free app called Insight Timer. And you can search based on the length you're looking for, based on the type of meditation you're looking for, like why you're doing it or what targeted outcome that you're desiring, and things like that. And again, you might put one on and you realize, oh, this person's boring. You might put it on, you'd be like, oh, I'm not vibing with this person's personality. You might put it on, I don't like this music. Or you may like all these things. And again, the point is to just taste stuff. It's just to taste stuff. and see what works for you. For me, guided meditations work. For other people, like, it just doesn't work. Like, they don't want to sit still, or it's hard for them to sit still. So maybe a walking meditation is better, for instance. Or maybe, I don't know, using sound, like drumming, or a gong, or just music in the meditation. Again, it really depends on personal preference. But yeah, again, one mindful breath. Let's just start there, folks. Like, one mindful breath. Can we intentionally choose to breathe right now and become as present moment focused and as non-judgmental as we can about the breath? So let's actually try that as we start to like work our way into whatever this guided meditation is going to be. Again, when I do these, I have no idea what the hell I'm going to say or what I'm going to do, but it seems to always work, because I know it's only going to work if I'm fully present and doing the practice as well. Okay, so just like I have no expectations for myself other than a trust and an inner knowing that whatever happens is going to be fine, I would offer that to you as well. Let's go into this with no expectations, an open mind, a curiosity, a flexibility, and let's see what happens. All right, so if you're watching or listening to me, you may be wherever. I would just urge, like, don't be driving a car or like using heavy machinery right now. That's not good. Wherever else, like if you're in bed, if you're like sitting down, if you're standing up, if you're walking, whatever, all good. And wherever we may be, let's see if we can just start to calm ourselves down by taking a nice deep breath. And again, no right or wrong, but let's see if we can inhale through the nose and draw the breath down to where our belly expands. And when it feels good, we can slowly exhale through the mouth or through the nose. If you'd like, you're welcome to close your eyes. I'm going to do that, at least for now. And if the breath felt good, feel free to continue with that. In through the nose and out through the mouth at your own pace. We're in no rush. No need to judge ourselves. And if we notice that we're judging what's happening right now, we may be thinking, am I doing this right? You may be thinking, this isn't going to work. You may be thinking, what the fuck am I doing here right now? Fine. Lovely. Let's just notice the judgment. Let's just notice the thought. And then gently and kindly let the thought pass. And then we can bring our attention back with an inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth. Again, perfection is not the goal. If you're sitting or lying down, I'd encourage maybe see if you can really give all of your weight to the chair as I'm doing, or if you're lying in bed, see if you can really give all of your weight to the pillow and the bed. We're still breathing. If you don't want to do more of that mindful in and out, then just breathe naturally. Nice thing is that our bodies are expertly designed to breathe, whether we're paying attention or not. But again, if you notice that your breath is really like rapid or shallow, meaning that the breath is really like only traveling to the upper parts of your chest, maybe see if you can draw the breath further down toward the belly. But at the same time, we don't want to become too fixated on right or wrong. But right now, we can just direct our attention to seeing how much we can allow ourselves, and right now our bodies, to relax, sinking into the chair, sinking into the bed or the couch or wherever you may be. And as we do this, we could do a brief body scan and maybe notice if you can sense any tension or stress throughout the body. And if you do, maybe bring some gentle movement flexibility to that area. I know for me, typically, I carry more tension in my neck and my shoulders. So, wherever we either feel tension, or again, we don't have to be as intentional. Our bodies are often much more wise than our minds. So, even just giving our bodies permission to move in whatever way feels natural or meaningful or helpful to whatever area of your body right now. Still breathing. Again, you may notice as you're listening to me, and I realize you're trying very hard. I appreciate you, but even if you're trying really hard to listen to my voice and to follow my guidance, you still may become distracted. Maybe you hear a noise in the room next door. Maybe you're thinking about something that happened at work earlier today, or maybe you're thinking about the flight that you have to get up early for to make your match in time this weekend. If you notice your thoughts or your attention is drifting anywhere else but my voice or focusing on your breath, totally fine. No judgment, no criticism. We can simply just notice, hey, I'm watching my attention be somewhere else or drift somewhere else. Just simply notice where it is and then gently redirect our attention back to another inhale and exhale. And if you're into the breathing right now, maybe see with every exhale, every breath out, see if you can release whatever stress or tension or friction or anxiety that you may be carrying within. We all experience these things from time to time, especially during a pandemic. Experience these things much more. We don't need to judge ourselves for noticing the tension or the anxiety or the stress. Practice like this just helps us become more comfortable being who we are, being who we actually are in the present moment. Breathing in and breathing out at our own pace, knowing that the breath is the anchor that connects us at all times to the present moment. And by doing this, we become more comfortable, or at least we become more familiar with simply just being. Feels kind of cliche for a meditation teacher to share something like this, but it's cliche for a good reason. We're called human beings for a reason. We're not called human doings. But yet in our culture, whether a typical Western capitalist society, or even in our pursuit to succeed in pro wrestling, we always feel this pressure to do more, to do the next thing, to do better, to reach higher, to get closer to the main event, to make more money, to start performing out of state, etc. We're in this race to do more, thinking another tweet or another session at the gym is going to help us get closer. And yeah, while those things may help us get closer, the ways in which we're engaging may not always be setting us up for long-term sustainable success. But I promise you, and I don't promise many things, but I promise you that a practice like this is more than likely going to be more helpful in setting yourself up for longer term, more sustainable success. Because a practice like this, where we're inhaling and exhaling, and just giving ourselves permission to simply be and not do, developing this skill and this comfortability within our own skin and within our own minds and within our own bodies, becoming more intimately connected with, more present to, more comfortable with, more at peace with ourselves as we are. Not who we are with our gimmick name and with our thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers. Not who we are with the line or not at the merch table. Not who we are with where we are or not on the card, or where we are in our journey with our skill set and our network, etc. All that's lovely, but none of that is who we actually are. Who we are is the present moment focus and presence in a practice like this, as we're paying attention to our inhales and our exhales. I'd argue that that's a more honest, raw, authentic version of what we call the self. And the more we can develop this relationship, I would argue, the better shot we have at being a successful pro wrestler or a successful anything, but most generally, a successful human being. So we'll just go for another minute or so. If something's working for you, follow that. If you're stretching in a certain way, if you're breathing in a certain way, it feels like you're grounding yourself and staying connected to the present moment, then that may work for you. Stick with that. Helpful to know that you're not alone in this practice. Whether you're listening live at the time of the recording or listening at any time in the future, you're connected to a much larger pro wrestling community, and even more intimately, a pro wrestling community that's interested and curious about ways in which we can improve our mental health and well-being as well. Breathing in and breathing out. Paying attention to the present moment. Realizing more and more with each breath and with each practice that the present moment is really all we've got. Because whatever you were going through 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago, and wherever your life may take you 10 days from now, or 500 days from now, you'll always be experiencing it in the present moment. So the more comfortable or tolerant we can become of the present moment, the more we can be open and willing and skillful to work with the present moment, whatever it may be, to become more flexible with the present moment, whatever it may be. Just like we learn to be open-minded and flexible and collaborative with our wrestling opponents, with the crowd, with a canceled flight, for instance. We too can learn how to dance more joyfully or more effectively with the present moment, no matter the circumstances, no matter where we are, with whom, how we're feeling, our physical state, our emotional state, and so on. Goal isn't necessarily to always be happy. That's not realistic. And that's okay. The goal is to become more tolerant and more flexible and skillful at accepting whatever it is we may be experiencing in the present moment. Learning to work with what we got instead of fighting against what is. So as we start to come to a close, I think it's helpful to allow ourselves time to say thank you to ourselves, to offer some gratitude to yourself right now for taking the time, and perhaps for you taking the risk of trying something new or unique, or maybe still for some, like questionable or woo-woo or hippy-dippy or whatever it may be. And that's certainly me not judging your perception of a practice like this. I'm just happy that you're open-minded enough to even just listen or to watch what we're doing right now. But again, I want to encourage you to thank yourself for engaging in this practice. For I believe engaging in a practice like this in general is a really healthy, productive, loving use of your time and way in which you've chosen to relate to yourself or connect with yourself as you're doing this. And so as we start to bring ourselves back to the room, you may want to create some more movement. I like rubbing my hands together, maybe giving my neck a gentle stretch, or just bringing more movement and blood flow throughout the body. If your eyes are closed, no rush, but you can gently start to open them. Bring yourself back to the room. As I'm reorienting my eyes to Zoom and my laptop. And maybe we can take one more final deep inhale and exhale together. And as Aaron suggests with people that he often works with, maybe see if you can naturally bring a gentle or big smile to your face. As fucking weird or awkward as that may feel. But often when we smile, that sets off a chain of reaction emotionally and mentally, physically, that signals we can feel a little bit better than maybe we had been prior to the smile. So this concludes formally our guided meditation. I don't know how long that went. I think it went longer than I expected, but I think I needed it. And I can say, at least for myself, I feel markedly more relaxed and calm and grounded than I did 10 or 20 minutes ago. So Aaron, I'm curious, like, where are you at, my man?
I feel lovely. I feel lovely. Right after this, I'm gonna hop into bed. So I think it's the perfect thing. Talking to lovely people, experiencing a guided meditation, doing something I love, and then getting into bed. It's like great.
Fuck
Go to
yeah.
bed.
I'm gonna watch Dynamite after this. I'm ready to watch some pro wrestling after this.
Absolutely. Fire me up. But thank you, Jordan, very much for being a part of this. Thank you for being a part of what Carl and I and Kyle are trying to do with professional wrestling. For those listening that are unaware of some of the things that we have going on, Carl and Kyle, like I said, run support groups. There's 2 a month. They run for 90 minutes. They're completely free. Reach out to any of us on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. We can get you with those times and dates for those sessions. There's also a Facebook community that I've created where there's journal prompts, reflections, worksheets, and just connection with other people who know what you're going through. And then hopefully we can get set up in the near future, the peer-led monthly check-in groups. So we kind of have these 3 tiers of things for resources and systems. And then we do these webinars every other month I'm not sure what August will be about yet. Me, Carl, and Kyle will figure that out going forward, but there will be something, there will be a discussion about how to take care of your mental health as a pro wrestler. And the first two are also available on YouTube. So thank you so much for anyone who's watched, viewed, liked, cared about what we're doing, made suggestions, had comments, questions, concerns, things that we could do better, worse, that we're doing good, anything. Feedback is crucial right now as we're doing something that's really never been done before. So thank you so much. Jordan, again, thank you. And much love to everyone. And please take good care of yourselves. Cheers.